Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Practice Launch Podcast, where we help give you all the information you need when starting your own dental practice, whether that be a scratch startup or an acquisition. I'm your host, Shane Simmons. I'm the CEO and founder of Crimson Media Dental Marketing. And today we're going to be talking about something that never fails. Everybody always has a million questions about because you just don't know where to start. And that is insurance and should you be in network? What's the credentialing process like? And hopefully we're going to be able to answer a lot of questions that I know many of you have today, because I'm very honored to have Dana Moss, the owner of PPO Dental Consulting, on the podcast with us here today. And Dana, this is your world, right? This is insurance credentialing, negotiations. This is what your company does. First off, thanks for joining us. Second off, what kind of led you down the path to start helping other dental practices with their insurance credentialing and negotiation process?
Well, one day I was home. I was a stay-at-home mom. My brother had just graduated dental school. Kids were in school. I was watching Days of Our Lives, eating bonbons on the couch. He gave me a call and said, "Hey, I bought a practice. Can you come help me answer the phones?" I said, "Sure. Can't be that difficult." Toughest 2 weeks of my life. Learned everything I could. I didn't know teeth had numbers. He taught me from the ground up, lots of pictures, and in network with every insurance under the sun. So the only thing I didn't know how to do was read an EOB. We were a single income, 4 kids, emergency room trip, stitches, broken arms, and I knew what it meant to be in network. And so that was really important. Part of how I started in this was that I knew how to read an EOB. Realized that I was very talented when it comes to insurance, and I loved it. I loved the puzzle piece that it took, and then learning the software and the business side of that. My brother really helped me out with that. So we bought and sold a couple practices together, and then he got married, had kids, wanted to sell everything except one practice. And then his friends said, "Hey, how did you guys do this?" And so he said, "You want to help my friends." And so I started helping his friends in 2008. Realized I loved it. I loved helping people figure out the insurance cobweb and how can we be more profitable and can we be in network and afford to do the dentistry that we want to do. So I started helping friends realize that I was like, I'd really love doing this. So I started my company in 2011 and started helping people with the insurance side of their practice.
Wow. And, did you know that when you got into this, that insurance was such a huge topic and discussion point for dental practice owners?
No idea. No idea. But the longer that I went and trying to strategize in my brother's practice, I was like, this is pretty cool. It's math, right? So, just figuring out, can we afford to do the dentistry for these allowables that we were given by the insurance company? A lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's same with us. When I was a kid, growing up, it was always kind of one of those situations where we had to go kind of to the provider that we was in network with our insurance. That was just what I remembered, kind of growing up too. And I had no idea that the complexities of this and the fact that you could even renegotiate your fee schedules. Like even as in the marketing side of it, as we kind of got our feet wet back in 2015, this was all new to us. And so now, we work with a lot of similar type of practices, I feel, is where, we both, have a lot of startup practices that come to us. And that's a lot of people who listen to this podcast. And one of the most common questions when I'm on a call with the startup, I ask is, are you going to be a network with PPOs? And if so, what does that look like? So my question to you, Dana, is over the years of doing this, why would a startup practice take insurance or be a network? What is the benefit to doing
that? Filling the chairs, first and foremost. That's what it comes down to. When you have a startup, and we'll talk about scratch startups right now. So a scratch startup, you want bodies in the chair. So that's the main reason why dentists choose to go and participate with insurance plans. Existing plans, if you're buying an existing practice, again, maybe the owner doctor right now is in network with plans. So maybe you don't want to rock the boat too much. So you want to take over those contracts. Or maybe you want to strategize and put yourself in a better position than what the owner's in. So depending on what type of startup it is, it all comes down to open chair time.
I totally agree, and that's the way I explain it too. Is like it's basically the way that your insurance, maybe not getting your full fee or whatever the case is. It's marketing dollars at the end of the day for the practice in a big way. So I agree, and it's very hard. I have found I've seen some do it, but it's very hard as a scratch startup unless you are very well known in the community already or have roots in that community. It's hard to start a practice and be totally out of network. What have you seen that side of things from the maybe success of practices taking off that are in network versus maybe those who were started out of network?
So, I mean, again, open chair time. That's why people do it. They want to put bodies in the chair. So obviously when people reach out to us, it's because they want to pick, okay, which plans do I need to be in network with? Where do I need to go from here? So most of the time when people reach out, they know that insurance has to play a part in their practice. Yeah. I do have startups that come to me after they've started up, like 6-12 months in. They're like, I need to join some networks because this fee-for-service model right now for them isn't working. So they'll come to us and ask us, hey, can we put a couple of insurances in place? So it really depends on what the dentist wants. What are their goals? Do they want to turn and burn? Or do they want to just be slow and grow? So it just depends on what the dentist's goal is with their startup.
Yeah, and I know, and this is something we'll definitely hop into later on in this discussion, but there's certain plans that maybe are bigger in your area that you may be in network with, and maybe there are others that you go out of network with because maybe they're not as popular of a plan. And so I know some different options there. But again, kind of reversing back to when you're starting a practice, from the marketing side, we always say, hey, you really want to start the marketing process about 8 months before the opening. And that's doing everything from your branding, your website, starting to document things on social media. When it comes to insurance, when should you start that process of deciding, whether or not you're going to be in network and starting, I guess, the process?
8 to 6 months before. So a lot of, and let's talk about the two differences. So startup practices, starting from scratch, at least 6 months before, it's an easier process than buying an existing practice, okay? And the reason is because startups, we can start credentialing right away and get some effective dates before the closing date. On existing practices, they want a bill of sale. Now, it's not all of them wanting a bill of sale, but most of them want a bill of sale. So we want to have everything ready to go so that we can submit everything after we have a bill of sale. So buying an existing practice, maybe 4 months before, but if it's a scratch startup, 8 to 6 months before.
8 to 6 months before opening, that's when we need to start the insurance process. Got it. Now, let's move a little bit into picking plans. So we touched on it a little bit earlier, maybe like I know in our area where I live, a lot of the big hospitals nearby and the universities, or Delta is their, insurance that they offer their employees typically. So how do you know as a practice owner what insurances you should be in network with versus ones maybe that you don't necessarily? What's the process there like when you're working with a practice?
So we want to find the major employers in the area. I mean, that's the most important part. Like who are the major employers? Better Business Bureau is a great resource for that. Sometimes if the dentist already knows the area really well, I mean, they'll tell me, well, it's Delta, MetLife, and Cigna. Those are the big players in the area. If they're buying existing practices, look at who the original doctor, the selling doctors who's in network with, and make sure to do your due diligence. So you're buying an existing practice, make sure you're looking at, okay, how many patients do they really have on these plans? So lots of strategies going into picking what networks to be in. So if I have a dentist who doesn't know the area and they're moving to a different state, a startup, we graduated at Texas A&M, and shout out there, sorry. And then they decide they're going to move to Missouri. Maybe they don't know the area. So we will help them look up the major employers in their area, contact their human resources, find out who their plans are with, and then see how to, on purpose, choose the plans to go in network with. A lot of dentists panic and are like, I want to take everything under the sun, kind of like what my brother walked into. Everybody. And that's, when you get to where you're having 28, 29 fee schedules, which we see every day, that can become an accounts receivable nightmare. So we need to be intentional when we're picking our networks. Employers and then the existing practices who already have networks in place would be where we would start. And then we would go from there.
And once you've decided, like, okay, these are the plans that we're going to be a network with, what's the process like from there? Is it you kind of, as a new practice owner, kind of have a set fee schedule you kind of have to do, or what's that like at the very beginning for the new practice owner once they do decide that?
Okay, so Shane, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Okay, so when you're opening a practice, you need to fee balance your office fees. That needs to be your priority, meaning I want you in at least the 80th percentile for your zip code. Now, you can get this information from the ADA, dental supply reps. We like Wasserman. I mean, you can buy this data from numerous sources, but setting your office fees strategically is super important because that does help with negotiating your allowables when you first start off. So make sure that you're fee balancing, meaning you're setting your office fees as high as you're comfortable with. When you are a heavy PPO practice, the 80th percentile, the doctors are like, well, it doesn't matter what my fees are. Well, it absolutely does, because when you're submitting your office fees to the insurance company, they want to see a massive write-off. And if they aren't seeing a massive write-off, your negotiation power goes way down. So make sure your office fees are placed at least the 80th percentile, because that's what insurance companies sell to employers. So if you're an out-of-network dentist and you're noticing, one of the things are, if you're noticing they're paying your fees, if you're submitting $125 for a pro fee and they're paying $125, fees are too low, dude. So let's figure out where to strategically place those fees to be able to not only set you up for success in the future, but also to capitalize on all of the insurances, whether in or out of network that you're in, to be able to capture those dollars. Making sure you're submitting your office fees when you set up your software. Please, please, please do your due diligence. Make sure you're setting up when you're submitting the insurance claims that you're submitting your office fees. If you don't do that, you're never going to see an increase. So those two things, wow, fee balancing and submitting your office fees, are really super important when you're starting off.
And with those, the fee balancing, setting the office fees, what's a good resource for dentists on that? Is that something that y'all help with, or do you have resources or certain places that you recommend some of these dentists to kind of look and get that information? I know you'd mentioned a particular source.
Yeah, so there's several. Okay, if the dentist is a member of the ADA, they have their own, and I believe it's pretty cost effective. I don't like to quote prices, but it's pretty cost effective. Your dental supply rep sometimes has that available, the fee percentiles. We like Wasserman. They gather all of the information from all the clearinghouses in your zip code. So Wasserman Dental, we like them. Fair Consumer Health, that's a website they can go to and also purchase the data or do quick, code searches. So there's several options for dentists to be able to get that information.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't personally realize that was such an important part of that negotiation process. So that is a really good information to know there from the very beginning. Make sure you're in that 80th percentile with your fees, so that you have more leverage when you go to these companies. So that was huge right there. Next piece I want to move into is, you hear the term the umbrellas, right? And I think there's oftentimes some confusion around that and who you're in network with. Can you talk a little bit about, this strategy through utilizing umbrellas?
You got it. So a lot of times when I ask a dentist, who do you want to be in network with, or who is the practice that you're buying, who are they in network with, there's a lot of confusion. So when I say in network, what the question is how many fee schedules do you want to be tied to? So not necessarily how many insurances, but how many fee schedules do you want to be tied to? So I'm going to do an analogy. that I heard from a great friend of mine, Maritza Duran. She does what we do.
I love Maritza.
Oh, she's fantastic.
She's been on the podcast, actually.
Oh, she's awesome. So she did this analogy on Facebook the other day, and kudos to her because explaining it, what hasn't been done better. So she explains an umbrella as the United States of America. And then the states are underneath the United States of America. So if you look at an umbrella plan, let's say Connection Dental, Dentamax, Premier Dental Group, Zealous, which by the way is a great one. So if they're the United States, all of the insurance plans are the states. So United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna, some United Concordia, MetLife, PDP Plus. We can get into all of this, but there's lots of different strategies to be able to encompass a bunch of insurance companies with one fee schedule. And most of the time, your umbrellas or your TPAs, those fee schedules are higher than a direct contract. So when you're starting out, you may like those allowables and think, oh, I can do dentistry for that. The cons to umbrellas, a lot of people don't get into those. We always look at the pros. The cons to that is maybe you're not going to be at the top of the list on their website. You might be towards the bottom. And if you're in a heavily populated area with a dentist on every corner, kind of like where we are, that's a tough game because you're down on page 17 and people don't go to page 17, and that's where companies like yours that could help, these dentists set themselves up with success too. A lot of people will Google MetLife dentist in Fort Worth, Texas. You guys can help dentists be able to capitalize on those things with marketing on those, the keywords. Or sorry, I'm in your territory. I don't know exactly what I'm saying.
No, you're on the money right there. Yes.
But a lot of patients are doing that instead of directly going to the website to look up their providers. So that is a strategy that I like to use. I like to use 1 to 2 TPAs and about 3 to 4 direct contracts when I'm starting up a startup. I like to limit that. The reason is because it's a fee schedule. I don't want to be tied to 27 fee schedules. 6 to 8, I'm pretty comfortable with at first. And then setting them up to success that maybe when they get to the point where they're booked out, they're squeezing chair time. Now the opposite's happening. Right now I'm running out of chair time. Then to set them up for success to be able to drop some of those direct plans, okay, with maybe $100 allowable pro fee, but I can drop that plan, get $125 and still stay in network through an umbrella. So there's lots of different strategies when it comes to setting those dentists up for success for that.
Awesome. Okay, so this leads to my next question. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see practice owners make when maybe starting this process at the very beginning? What are some of those common, hey, you can avoid these things that I've noticed over the years and working with so many practices, you're going to be better off?
Making decisions, like not making a decision, being a little indecisive, trying over-analyzing. We call it analysis paralysis, right? Over-analyzing. Work with a professional that knows what they're doing to be able to help guide you through that. There are so many times, especially with doctors who are actually already have networks that don't know what networks they're in. If you're buying an existing practice and this office manager's in there saying, sign this, sign this, sign this, and we see that all the time, and they end up not knowing who they're in network with. So that is not doing your due diligence. So sitting too long on a fee schedule that an insurance company's given you, once you get a fee schedule from the insurance company, please respond to them quickly. They love that. They're more willing to work with you if you just let them know, hey, you know what? I've got this fee schedule, still trying to figure it out. I'll let you know. So not communicating with the insurance companies is a big, huge red flag for those insurance companies. They keep track of us. They've got more AI out there than we can imagine. So, not responding to the insurance in a timely manner, whether you're doing it yourself or you're working with a professional to help you through that. Don't go and network with everybody under the sun. Pick the right plans.
Ain't that the truth? I've seen that. I talked to, practices who've done that before, and they're like, well, starting out, we didn't, really do any marketing, but we just, took every, network, like you said, under the sun. We went to network with Medicaid, they just did it all. And then realized really quickly that the practice may have got out of hand as far as, like you said, the collectible. I mean, and then you have a whole mess in your hands. So yeah, by being proactive and these things that Dana's talking about, like this is going to save you a lot of headaches in the future for sure. I want to talk a little bit about, just for some of those listening who maybe already have a practice, negotiations. This is, every day I log on to Facebook, I see somebody talking about, hey, I need to renegotiate, or do I need to renegotiate? And there was something that you talk about that I think is key for people when it comes to negotiating. And you talk about the 5 emotional rules to follow when negotiating. Could you explain what you mean by that, Dana, and what are those 5 rules?
You bet. So a lot of people that I talk to say we fight insurance companies, right? I mean, we're going to fight the insurance company, get the best allowables. Let me tell you what, guys, we don't fight insurance companies. They win. So we don't
They got way more money.
We don't want to be that heavy-handed person when it comes to negotiation. So the 5 emotional rules are pretty simple. The first one is be nice. The other person on the other end of that phone is doing their job just like you are. So be nice. Be nice to the insurance company. Don't threaten to leave that network unless you plan on leaving that network. That's not a strategy I recommend. I'll hear a lot of people go, well, we threatened to leave this network and they gave us a higher fee schedule. Well, good for you. But if you threaten to leave, a lot of insurance companies are going to say bye-bye. They don't, no skin off their nose losing one dentist. So don't threaten to leave a network unless you're going to leave that network. Number 2, they're always right. The insurance company's always right. Different times of the year, insurance companies open the door to negotiations. That rep that you're speaking to knows if they can negotiate or not negotiate during those 90 days that you're asking. So they're always right. It's not like you can try to strong arm yourself into trying to plead your case to get more. So they're always right. You want to see, show them what you want. Have a spreadsheet ready to go with your top 25 codes. If they say, we're not negotiating right now, totally understand that. When can I negotiate? When will I be eligible for a fee schedule review? And just, thank you so much for all this information. And it's just really important to be nice. Humility goes a long way. So rule number 3, be humble. We don't know more than they do. Then sometimes they, I love to still do this to this day when I'm negotiating, especially for my brother. I know I keep coming back, but he's wonderful. But I go to his practice and I negotiate his contracts still to this day, and I'll still ask reps, hey, can you tell me what I need to do here? They love that. They're there to help you. And most of the time, these reps they want to encourage you to negotiate. They want to help you and get you higher allowables. But if you go in guns blazing, I mean, who wants to help somebody like that? So be nice. They're always right. Be humble. And then build a relationship with them. So we have built relationships with thousands of reps across the country. We have reps that let us know certain things. We have a rep in Dallas-Fort Worth area that doesn't like to drive on ice. So we keep very, very good notes when it snows when it rains and we have ice. We'll reach out to her. Hey, don't drive today. Day looks rough. Build relationships with those reps. Super important. I had a practice reach out to us 2 weeks ago. And they wanted to hire us to do credentialing for their new associates coming in. But this person had already built so many wonderful relationships with these reps. I said, you don't need us. You already have this down. Just keep doing what you're doing and build those relationships with those reps. Super important. And use their name a lot. I mean, that sounds familiar, right? What we do with patients that come in the practice. Use their name a lot. So those are the 5 rules.
Man, so many things, and I don't know if you've read this before, but I was thinking in my head have you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie? Okay, I'm thinking, like, as you're talking this, I'm like, a lot of those are like principles that Dale Carnegie goes back to. And for any of you listening to this, like, I highly, highly suggest reading that book. That's one of like the 3 books in my life that's just been most impactful. But you're absolutely right. It's like you go in, whether it's, you're going in to talk about an issue that you had with your car after you had a repair recently done. Anytime you go in and you're kind of being a jerk about it, it's like you're not going to get as far. I always love the saying, you catch more flies with honey. That's kind of very a similar thing is you go in, you're nice to people, polite, building relationships, you're more likely to get helped out. I mean, think about the patients in your practice. Like, are you going to want to do everything you possibly can for that patient who's being an absolute jerk to you, or the sweet patient who's nice, who's, saying, how can we fix this? You're going to want to do more for that person. So I think that is invaluable advice right there when negotiating, because I think a lot of people just start off on the wrong foot. Wow, that was great. Okay, so we're starting to run low on time here, so I do want to talk couple more talking points on the negotiation side, because I know people are gonna really want to hear about this. First thing I was gonna ask is, how long, like when you do start the negotiation process, how long can someone typically expect for that process to last when doing a negotiation?
3 to 9 months. And it depends on the insurance company and how quickly they get back to us. Some insurance companies are taking longer right now due to not having enough people to do this, and we're running into that. Ever since COVID, I know I'm so tired of the C word, but ever since that, people are having a hard time staffing their teams, just like, pretty rampant around the United States with dentists. We're all seeing it on Facebook, right? I need to hire. So it's taking a little bit longer. So 3 to 9 months.
Okay, awesome. And then last thing here is, we're really big on, if somebody can help you get from where you're at to where you want to go, utilize resources, utilize those cheat codes, if you will, those shortcuts. Don't try to do it all yourself, because at the end of the day, we only have so much bandwidth, right? Like, we can only do so much. And especially for those who are running a practice or starting a practice, you have a lot of different things that you're doing. And so, sure, could you do this yourself or have somebody on your team, do this? Yeah, probably. But is that really what their sole focus is? So that's why I brought Dana on from, PPO Dental Consulting, because they are some of the best at what they do in this. And so I would love to ask, kind of Dana, what are some of the ways that if somebody's listening to this, what's kind of those next steps if they want to learn more about what you all do, see whether or not you may be able to work with their practice? What's kind of the next step that somebody listening should take?
Well, the easiest one would be to go to our website, PPOdentalconsulting.com, learn about the services that we have to offer. Go to the negotiation tab and look through all the services that we have. We offer different levels of services. So people who want to do it themselves, we have a step-by-step guide for that. And that's a affordable way to be able to do it. And we have the full service. We can do it for you. So there's all kinds of options, depending on the dentist goals and budgets, to be able to get that done for them.
Yeah. And they do have some great different resources and things that are, on their website, and you can see some of the different people, that they've worked with and talked with. So I definitely, recommend going to PPOdentalconsulting.com. We'll have that in the show notes below, so you can check them out. And kind of just as a final little thing we like to do here, Dana, is for specifically our startups, since this is the Dental Practice Launch podcast, if you could give 3 pieces of advice to somebody who is looking to start their own dental practice, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
Okay. So the first one is fee balance your office fees. Make sure you're as close to the 80th percentile for your office fees that you feel comfortable with. I didn't mention before, but if you feel like, oh my gosh, that 80th percentile is super high, what about my cash paying patients? Shane, I'm sure you've talked to people who do loyalty plans, membership plans in place. So put one of those in place to help offset that, to help calm your tummy when you see those fees that I'm going to ask you to charge. So put something like that in place to help offset that. So number 1, fee balancing. Number 2, make sure you're submitting your office fees to the insurance company. Those 2 things stop us from negotiating for practices, because I want you to up your fees and I want the insurance companies to see your fees for at least 6 months. So those are 2. Now, number 3, I'm going to chase a little squirrel because we didn't talk about this, and that's my fault. But know what it costs per procedure. So a lot of dentists go into this and they're just looking at, oh, the crown's only $850. I don't want an $850 crown. Well, what does a crown cost you to do? So a lot of dentists skip that step, Please don't do that. What does it cost you to do a one surface filling? What does it cost you to do a crown? Down to rent, electric, and the 2x2 that you use, or the cotton roll that you use, assistant time, chair turnover, everything. Build a spreadsheet on how much does it cost you to do that procedure. Hygiene procedures included, scaling and root planing, perio maintenances, prophies, x-rays, everything. Know how much that procedure costs you, and can you do that procedure for X amount of dollars? That's a really, I missed that when we were talking, Shane. Super important step that dentists miss is that they always look at a few codes and they're like, well, I can't do it for that. Well, can you? I mean, a lot of dentists don't even know what it costs them. What does it cost you to do that? So to figure out your profit margin per procedure is something that's super important to do also.
That's massive. And that's, again, something they just don't teach in dental school. We were, a few of my team members and I were at a conference, and the guy was talking. He said he used to work at Chuck E. Cheese back in the day, and he said Chuck E. Cheese was so good at knowing exact cost of what it costs to make every single thing on that menu. Large pizza, extra large pizza, down to the number of pepperonis, like on the guide. They knew you put this many pepperonis on the pizza, this many pieces of sausage, whatever the case was, because they knew exactly how much every single pepperoni costs. They knew exactly what their profit margin was on that pizza. And it's the same thing in your dental practice. You need to know down to the chair time, your hourly, your hygienist hourly, assistant, whatever the case is, exactly how much it costs you to provide that service. So that's a massive one. I'm glad that you touched on that here at the end. And we could talk about this for, I'm sure, several more hours, but we got a limited time here. So Dana, thank you so much for hopping on here. And again, reach out to Dana and her team, PPO dentalconsulting.com, and check them out and see if they may be able to help you in your practice. And thanks again for being on the podcast.
Well, Shane, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.